This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Tuesday, the 28th day of March, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast, and it's another heavy show today. Not going to lie to you, not going to sugarcoat it. It's heavy. It's a tough one, because whenever there's a shooting at a school, never mind elementary little kids, I mean, it's tragic. Any child, it's tragic. Any shooting, it's tragic. Any deaths. But this is a Christian school in particular. I have a lot on my mind about this and a lot on my heart about it. I know it weighs heavy on all of us. I wish it weren't so, but the news is what it is, and so we're going to tackle it with Tomi Lahren, who is the host of Fearless with Tomi Lahren on Outkick. You know Outkick.com and Fox News. You see her regularly. Tomi will be with us today. Steve Moore, our chief economist, will be with us today. And despite the risks involved in talking about this honestly and candidly, I do it, and I'm going to do it here. And I have said before on my radio shows, and I say to you again here, I am not going to be dissuaded from telling the truth. And if it means I'm no longer allowed to be able to tell the truth, then so be it. But the truth is what the country needs right now. The truth is what everyone in this country needs right now. And I hope to provide some of it for you today. The truth of the matter is, as well, is that if you're buying your own health insurance, you're probably paying entirely too much for that health insurance, and you may be in a plan that's really not that great. And if you ever really need health insurance, I'm warning you. After I had a conversation with John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com, he said, look, a lot of people are in health insurance plans, HMOs in particular. They don't know what they have until they get out of town or out of market, and they have to go to a hospital. And then they open up the hood and find out it's horrible insurance coverage. Don't let that be you. Please, number one, just call John, give him 2 minutes, tell him what you have, and see if you can get something cheaper. 30 to 60% cheaper, could be hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars cheaper for you and your family or your employees if you buy your own health insurance. Or maybe, you're paying an okay rate, but your health insurance is rotten and it doesn't cover much. You don't want to find that out in an emergency. So the number one reason people go bankrupt in this country is because of medical bills and insurance that just doesn't take care of them. Just make sure your insurance is up to snuff and the most affordable it can be. 2 minutes with John Ruhlman is all it's going to take. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. So I proposed something last night on Twitter and social media, and I'd like to open it up again. A couple of friends reached out to me, thought I'd lost my mind. I was actually being a little provocative, but I'm also kind of serious. You know, the left is, MSNBC predictably this morning is already wall-to-wall with we got to do something about the guns and gun reform and how Americans are so supportive of doing something about the guns, all to avoid the obvious story here. MSNBC wants to run as fast as they can from the obvious story of this shooting yesterday. And what is the obvious story? This is a mentally unstable person. This is a mentally ill person. And I believe that gender dysphoria is mental illness. So let me just say unequivocally off the top, and I don't care if I lose my job over this, when you do not believe you are the gender you were born, let me say it again to be more succinct and clear. If you don't believe you're the gender you're born, you're mentally ill. If you don't, I'm going to say it again. If you don't believe you're the gender you're born, you're mentally ill and you need to seek mental health treatment. It is not to be embraced. It is not to be taught. It is not to be pushed. It is not to be celebrated. It is a mental illness, and it is something for which you must seek treatment. And anybody telling you anything other than that is abusing you and enabling your mental illness. So having said that, since the left is so keen on seizing weapons, since the left is so excited to take opportunities to talk about how law-abiding citizens in this country, who have a Second Amendment right to protect and defend themselves, who have a Second Amendment right to own a weapon, since the left in this country is so hell-bent on using instances like this yesterday to take your gun and mine, let me open with a volley. Let me open with a conciliatory olive branch to the American left today. I'm ready to talk about gun control. I'm ready. And I'd like to start, since you people are so keen to talk about mental illness and red flag laws when it comes to gun owners and background checks, right? They're always talking about background checks. Well, let's start with the most obvious. This person, as I understand it, legally procured every firearm used yesterday. Let's start with an added background check when people go to buy firearms. Do you believe you're the gender you were born? Yes or no? Do you identify as transgender? Yes or no? Add that to the background check, and if they say, yes, I believe I'm transgender, or no, I do not believe I'm the gender I was born, I believe that it triggers a red flag immediately, and all those people who check that box should immediately be prohibited from buying a firearm. How's that for starters, okay? There you go. Democrats, I'll give you a concession. You want to start with gun control measures? There's my concession. Do not allow anyone who checks a box on a form, I believe I'm transgender, I believe I'm a different gender than I was born, do not allow them to buy a gun. How's that? That's my opening concession to the American left today. Do you think they'll take me up on it? Now, of course, some of you out there, you saw that and you got mad at me. You thought I was serious. Of course, I'm being provocative. But listen, it's a mental illness. There's no doubt about it. I believe people who think this way genuinely need mental help. I'm serious. That's not being cruel. Now, I know there are some people in this audience that think that's being mean or risky or intolerant. No, I'm sincere. I think it's every bit as confused and mixed up as if I came here today and told you I was a World War II bomber pilot. It's not true. It's not true. And we must begin to start telling people the truth in this country. And our churches are going to have to start telling people the truth in this country. People need a steady, hardcore dose of truth dotted right in between the eyes. There is truth and there is fiction. And this fiction the American left has been peddling, that if you don't feel like you're the gender you're born, you can embrace it and become something else. That is the stuff of Satan himself. And it drives people to madness. And this 28-year-old woman, which is really unbelievable and proof positive of what I'm talking about, because the stats are so infinitesimal, you can't even measure women involved in instances like this. Women are so rarely involved in instances like this, it's barely measured. This woman needed help, and instead she was obviously full of rage. A lot of confusion about who this person even was because, you know, when the reports started coming out and pictures started surfacing, it was hard to tell. This is one of these people who, you know, looks kind of amorphous gender-wise. You don't even know. Was it a man who wants to be a woman? Was it a woman who wants to be a man? No, it was a woman. This person was always a woman. She's a 28-year-old woman who wanted to be called by a male name, and I guess was living a life as a man. She attended this Christian school in Nashville, I guess, when she was a younger kid. Apparently, as I read the story, her mother was a pretty devout Christian. Very pro-gun control also from the posts I read from her mother, apparently. But to call this story a gun story, I don't know, is to call the Nazi invasion a border dispute. This is mental illness, folks. And it occurs to me, I said it yesterday on social media, not even the church. I say the church stands in the breach. Really, even the church is starting to splinter rapidly and fall off on this issue. And by the way, I know there are a lot of you, and I read it and I saw it, a lot of you believe, and I don't disagree, is this a hate crime? Yeah, of course. Of course it is. They're not going to call it that. But do I believe this 28-year-old person targeted this Christian school? Of course she did. She targeted because she was formerly a student there, and from what I'm given to understand about Tennessee law, they just passed some pretty aggressive stuff on this gender confusion nonsense just recently. So I have, and by the way, we're told that she left a pretty extensive manifesto with plans, with schematics of the school. She'd been casing the place. She attended there. So she knew exactly where she was going. She knew exactly the halls. She knew exactly who she was going to kill. She killed the school administrator. So she took out the king of the school. So she knew where she was going, and then a substitute teacher and a principal, and then 3 children. And thank God it wasn't more than 3. I mean, it's remarkable. But this woman knew exactly where she was going. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly who she wanted to kill. And they say she left a detailed manifesto, and I'll guarantee you, I'll promise you, if this thing was released, and apparently they are reading some of it, the press is out there, because they're posting certain things she's written on Instagram and other things. I don't know how much of this manifesto exists. I hope I can get my hands on the full thing, because I'll promise you this. I'll almost promise you this. Maybe I'm wrong. By the way, I'm happy to come back and correct the record if I'm wrong. Right now, I'm purely guessing because I don't know. But I have a very funny feeling this manifesto, this deeply detailed plan to shoot up this Christian school that this woman attended, I'll just bet you, she might have written a word or two about Christianity and the Christian faith. And these new Tennessee laws, perhaps. I'll bet you. Anybody want to take that bet? Of course, you're not hearing about that. Because they do not. The only thing the left wants to talk about today is the weapon this woman used. They don't want to talk how extremely bizarre and rare it is that a woman would ever be involved in this. They don't want to talk. They barely want to mention that this is a Christian school. They just want to call it a school shooting because that's easier. No. Let's be very clear what it was. It was a Christian school shooting. So let's talk terms, and let's be very clear about the terms in this story, because the truth is missing in most of the reporting you're hearing on it. This was a biological woman who pretends she's a man in real life, who targeted a Christian school to shoot. Now, when you say all those things in a sentence together, doesn't that sound different than another senseless school shooting? Yeah, it's a little more complicated, isn't it? All of this becomes much more complicated when you identify this person as an actual woman who targeted an actual Christian school, a woman who's been leading her life as a man. None of those are very inconvenient facts. They don't want to talk about this as a faith-targeted shooting. They don't want to talk about this as a transgender targeting a Christian institution. They don't want to talk about those things. They just want to talk about the gun. We need stricter gun control. At this very moment, that's what they're talking about on MSNBC. We need stricter gun control. What we need is truth. What we need is more truth-telling. People like these need help, and our churches need not to bow or buckle in fear or pressure. They need to stand up, be counted, and tell the truth. There are only 2 genders. You are born one of them, and it cannot be changed. And if you believe that's not true, you need to seek professional psychiatric help. And by the way, for those of you who believe that this is a perfectly natural, perfectly healthy, perfectly normal way of life, if that in fact is your belief system, you got a terrible advertisement for this lifestyle yesterday. It is incumbent upon you people who believe that this is normal to explain to me how this happened. And if you leave out the fact that this woman thinks she's a man and tell me that it's something else entirely, you're being dishonest and I can't listen to you. You're not telling the truth. If the transgender movement is so desperate to be legitimized, Hollywood and so many on the left desperately want us to wrap our arms around this and tell people that this is normal, then they'd better explain yesterday. And don't cut corners. Don't say something as simple as, well, I'm sure it was something. I mean, we don't know the full scope of the... But no. We start with the most obvious. We start with what we know. This was a girl who attended a Christian school, who grew into a woman who decided she wanted to start becoming a man, and then targeted that school she attended. Now, if you can't do simple math on that story, you're not being an honest person. I'm an honest person of goodwill. I don't like talking to people about this when they want to start talking about guns. The least important thing in this story is the gun. Let me say that. There's another truth. Ready? Nobody else is going to say that to you today. The least important fact in this entire story is the weapon of choice. Who else is saying that today? Probably not many. But that's what I do here. I say tough and obvious things. Was this a hate crime? A lot of you want this called a hate crime. Sure it was. Did this woman target Christians? I don't have the proof of that yet, but I'll bet she did. I'll bet, if I'm a betting man. Again, happy to come back and correct the record if I'm wrong. A detailed manifesto apparently exists out there. I have a funny feeling she probably wrote about it. Might be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Hope I'm wrong. Okay? I'll even stipulate. I hope I'm wrong. I hope once I read this detailed manifesto, I'll be able to come back to you and say, I was wrong. This is a mentally ill person who had nothing against Christians. Just decided to, I don't know, take out a grievance on an old school. Had nothing to do with the faith. That this woman was a practicing Christian throughout her life. She's dead now, sadly. Age 28. I just have a hunch that's not true. But if it's true, happy to come back and correct the record. It wasn't immediately clear, writes the New York Post, when Hale attended the school or for how long. The school had a protocol for an active shooter. It wasn't immediately clear if it was put in place during the shooting. Sounds like it's another case of a side door open. I mean, you hate that we have to talk about schools like they're Fort Knox now or the Pentagon, but unfortunately it's the era in which we live, and side doors just can't be open. Side doors just can't be open. They can't be propped open anymore. I'm sorry to say. You can't. There's got to be one entry point into these schools, and a perimeter check has got to be happening at all times, at all schools. I think I told you when my daughter was in elementary school, one of the things they did do that I thought was brilliant and kind of surprising, I'm sure they've done away with it now, they used to call it watchdog dads. And the whole point of the program, in fact, I'm certain, I should go back and look up if they're even doing this anymore because it's such a patriarchal thing. But this was such a privilege for the little kids. They loved this. In my kids' elementary school growing up, dads would volunteer one day of the week, and it quickly filled up because, you know, every kid wanted their dad to come do it. So the whole school year was filled quickly. But a dad would come and be the watchdog dad of the school every day because they embraced this notion that dads being present in the school was an important thing. Men being seen in the school was an important thing. Can you believe that? It's a public school, no less. Wasn't that long ago. But one of the things they did, and I liked it, was they thought it important that it wasn't that you just went and you spent time with your own kid. You walked around and you were a male presence in the room, in the hall, in the lunchroom, in other classes. You went in to help in other classes. And one of the things they asked you to do was patrol the halls and walk the circumference of the building, constantly checking entry points. One of the things they had done was have you check all entry points outside the building to make sure they were all locked and secure, with only one entry point into the school, and that was if you were buzzed in through the office. Now, again, I know there's no perfect solution, and I'm sorry that we have to talk about school buildings this way, but that seems to me like that's got to be standard operating procedure for all educational institutions these days. One entry point, and you can't have propped side doors open. You just can't. And furthermore, when it comes to a private Christian school, and I'm sure that my daughter's private Christian school is going to be having this conversation, and I can't wait to be a part of it. Wouldn't hurt my feelings to have somebody. I'd be happy to bump up a couple bucks more and pay for somebody armed standing at the door. Doesn't bother me in the least. I think there's probably going to be a healthy discussion about that in Christian schools across the country as they continue to grow. I hope there is. Anyway, the school had a protocol for active shooters. It wasn't immediately clear whether it was put in place. Police said at the press conference yesterday that this woman entered the school through a side door, shooting at it. Okay, so if that's true, then the door was locked. She shot her way in. Nothing you can do about that, I suppose. Police said they received an initial call about an active shooter at 10:13. Responding officers quickly began clearing the first story of the school after hearing gunshots. It's really remarkable that more children weren't killed here. The Covenant School is a Presbyterian school for about 200 students from preschool through 6th grade. The school has roughly 50 staff members. Police raided this woman's home, blocking off surrounding streets. One local said Hale lived at the house of her mother, who works at a church nearby, and her father, who is self-employed. They saw her on Sunday. We are shocked. We would see Hale from time to time. She was reserved and very quiet. Well, aren't they all? You know, data indicates, here's the truth. Data indicates that 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves. 82%. I know, I personally have friends who have a son who, after graduating high school, believed he was a woman. And I have talked with them about this, and I pray for them over this, and I know that they know that their son is not well. I know they know that. I don't browbeat them. I don't beat them up about it. Of course, I pray for them. But here's what they told me, and here's what I know is true about those of you who are living with someone like this. You're terrified they're going to hurt themselves. And so you go along with it. And this is what my friends have decided. We're so afraid he's going to take his life, we just entertain this. I'm not in this position, so I don't intend to judge people, loved ones who have someone in their family who's battling with this. I'm not a mental health professional, and I don't wish to sound callous or cruel to people who are dealing with a loved one who's struggling with this, but it is a struggle. It is a real mental health problem. And the people who battle with this idea that they are not the gender they were born, they are mentally ill people, and most of them statistically have considered killing themselves. This woman was probably no different. 30% of transgender female teens say they attempted suicide. Among non-binary youth, 41.8% of respondents stated that they had attempted suicide at some point in their lives. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics, by the way, if you're curious. That's where those numbers come from. Surveying people who identify as non-binary or transgender. American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, the American left, and I'm sorry to say, many in medicine, see this as a profit center and a new voting bloc. And instead of trying to help these people, they are trying to exploit them by embracing them and throwing parades for them and telling you and me that we should shut up about this, that this is all very normal and we should embrace it. Even our churches, some of our churches now, have decided the same thing. It is not biblical It is certainly not biblical. Let me be clear to my brothers and sisters in Christ. This is not biblical. This is the stuff of Satan. And for those of you who are not Christian or faith-based in any way, this is still a mental illness. And most of these people surveyed have admitted it's a mental illness that leads most of them to consider taking their own lives. Embracing it and loving these people to thinking they're another gender is not helpful. It is not loving. It is encouraging and enabling a mental illness. This 28-year-old, apparently, from what I'm reading, lived in the home of her parents. 28. 28. A 28-year-old woman living as a man lived with her parents. And apparently, mom and dad, I can only imagine, are kind of at their wits' end. What do we do with her? We don't want to throw her out. I'm sure they know much more about her than we do. I have a very funny feeling if you ask the Hale family, you'll find that this is a family really confused and really struggling, quite sad, scared for their daughter, don't know what to do for her. So we'll just let her pretend she's a boy here in our custody because we don't know what else to do for her. Might be what these parents are thinking. And these parents are not alone. This is a very sad story on so many fronts. Not the least of which, of course, are the murdered people in the Christian school. But I refuse to ignore the truth and the truths of these stories. I refuse to stop telling the truth. I refuse to attend church, worship service, listen to people give sermons who don't embrace the truth. I won't do it. I won't do it. I'm not participating in this. I'm not going to talk about the guns. That is not the truth of this story. Well, we're living it. Inflation has consequences. You'll hear me talk with Steve Moore about that week after week as the Fed raises interest rates to combat out-of-control government spending. Long-term bonds have diminished in value, crippling the banks. Depositors are holding their breath. Investors are bailing on bank stocks. Diversification has never been more important. The recent surge in gold prices is directly tied to the extreme market volatility we're experiencing right now, and that's why gold has historically been a great hedge against stock market as well as inflation. So the company that I would recommend to you highly, if you want to diversify, if you're looking to maybe start flirting with the idea of gold, you got to call Birch Gold Group or at least reach out via text. If you text Chris, my name, if you text Chris to 989898, they will send you an information kit on gold and how to get started. Now, again, I'm not giving you advice here. I'm just telling you if that's something that you're interested in, and I would strongly recommend that you at least investigate it. It can't hurt to just text Chris to 989898. Birch Gold will help you convert your existing IRAs or 401ks that are tied to a volatile market right now. They'll let you actually invest that in physical precious metals, gold or silver. And the best part is it's tax sheltered at that, if you didn't know that. So text Chris to 989898. Claim your free information kit on gold. See if it's right for you. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of happy customers trust Birch Gold already to protect their future, so you can do it too. If it interests you, text for that free info kit. What can it hurt? Text Chris to 989898 today. What caused the shooting? Why wasn't the school better fortified? Why wasn't it better? I mean, look, everyone is going to talk about there's lack of security. Everyone is going to talk about entry points. Everyone is going to talk about guns. Everyone is going to talk about the strategic ways in which this could have been prevented or should have been stopped. And I appreciate all that, but it still completely misses the point of this event yesterday. I sincerely believe it is a spiritual story, and I seriously believe that it is a story of mental illness. I think those are the two most important factors in yesterday's stories, and I'm not going to be convinced otherwise. Secondary is guns. Secondary is debates about school security. It's important. I'm not dismissing it as unimportant, but it's secondary. I'm not going to devolve into the typical pedestrian debate of guns and security guards. This was a very special event yesterday. Special for terribly dark reasons. And to not focus on that is to miss a very important point of the story. So, and honestly, I'm grateful. This is one of those things where I know that God has put me in a place that I'm supposed to be today, working for this company. Because if I said this on any other broadcast or podcast that was corporate owned, I'd be fired this morning. I probably wouldn't be able to finish the show. I'm serious. It scares me, actually. If I'm to be just if I'm to just be right, straight up truthful with you, it frightens me that most of the places that I've worked most of my career, if I said what I was saying this morning, I probably wouldn't be with you tomorrow. And that's sort of unfathomable to me because what I just said in this last few minutes is not something that I would have thought exceptional, and I don't think most of us would have, maybe even 10 years ago. But now it's the kind of thing that a company will fire you over for being a bigot. So I guess for a moment I want to, and I know this may sound like pandering. It's not. I have no incentive to do so. I don't have a contract coming up. I just want to say that I'm grateful to work for a place that allows me to still talk about this way, because so many of my colleagues who know damn well that's what this story is about won't say it quite the way I said it today because they're afraid of losing their paychecks. And I'm not shaming them over that because I understand. I get it. But can you believe that we live in a country at a time where broadcasters are afraid to say this woman who thought she was a man needs mental help? That's a mental illness. That's not something to celebrate. That's the kind of thing now that'll get you fired from a show like this easily, quickly, as hate speech. So I count my blessings personally this morning that we're able to freely discuss this here. You know, I didn't get into it yesterday, but one of the Wall Street Journal polls that came out dovetails with this a little bit. The share of Americans, this is just a survey of, Americans generally, adults in the country. It has been done for at least 20 plus years now, this same poll. Wall Street Journal, NORC at the University of Chicago. They partner and they survey adults on different things about the country. A couple of the things are patriotism and faith. And in 1998, when they surveyed these people, again, this is a random poll of, again, adults. It's not likely voters. It's just people that make up the country, right? It's 1,000 some random people that they select. And every year since at least 1998, they're dating back to 1998 as a reference here in this story, they've been asking the question about patriotism and how important is patriotism to you. In 1998, 70% of people randomly surveyed said patriotism was important to them. 70%. Pretty high. This one that just came out this week, 38% of respondents said patriotism was very important to them. It's an over 40-point drop since 1998 in 20 years. So people's pride in country, and there's a lot of reasons why. By the way, I'm sure there are a number of people in this audience who love their country, love the founding, love our Constitution, love the Bill of Rights, but don't feel particularly flag-waving proud of the state of things right now. So I recognize that. This is not just people that hate the country. These are also people that just feel completely let down by their country. And that's also purposeful. It is purposeful to deflate. It is purposeful to dispirit. It is purposeful to weaponize the government against you, make you feel like you're getting the backs of the hands of government, from the IRS to the FBI, big government intruding on your lives, making things more expensive, making you feel more controlled and less free. So when people are asked, do you feel patriotic? I can understand why there are a lot of people who, including in this audience, who say, not really. Not with a guy that talks about chocolate chip ice cream when there's been a Christian school shooting. Doesn't make me feel proud. So I get that, right? But here's the other one. Faith, religion. Only 39% said religion was very important to them. That's down from 62% who said so in 1998. So that's fallen almost by half as well. So patriotism has dropped more steeply than people who have a faith, but people who have a faith, people who cleave to religion, people who say their faith is important to them, that's dropped by a sizable amount over 20 years too. This is not a great recipe for a robust republic. That's not a healthy state for the country to find itself in. When a random sampling of 1,000 of adults mostly say they don't have patriotism and they don't have faith. That's independent of this story to a degree, but not really. That was something I meant to get to yesterday, and I didn't. But it seems fitting now. And it dovetails with the story yesterday about the number of people that just feel like they don't trust their public officials anymore. I mean, Philadelphia is still pretty freaked out that it's not safe to drink the water. I mean, think of that. You know, I actually said during the East Palestine train derailment that if it happened in Philadelphia, there would be a far different response. I might have to go back and correct myself. I actually am kind of amazed that Joe Biden's Philadelphia isn't drinking water today, and I don't know that the White House has said anything about it now that I think about it. Of course, the news was dominated by something else yesterday. So maybe a lot of people don't notice it, but have you, Fast Eddie, have you heard anybody at the federal level? Have you heard anybody talk about the fact that the water supply in Philadelphia is not drinkable at the moment?
I haven't. Even as far as like the EPA or somebody like a lieutenant of some sort coming to town, I haven't even heard of that. The state of our union is. A friend of mine once said to me, I don't envy you, Stigall. You got to get on the air every day and give a national eulogy about the state of the country. Some days it does feel that way. I must confess, it does. It's a blessing that we're able to still be here and talk about it. But look, when you have no patriotism and when you have no faith, you have really no hope. What do you expect from elected leaders? Not much, right? When you're in a pit of despair, what do you expect from people who are elected, assuming you even participate in elections? What do you expect from them? Nothing. I mean, when you already don't feel like life's much of a parade, what do you care about the people leading it? I mean, it's almost as though destructive people would lower your expectations while doing their destruction for that very reason, so that you wouldn't expect much from them. The soft bigotry of low expectations. The less people expect, the more people have their hand out. The more content people will be with less. Propping up mental illness. Attacking people of faith who tell the truth. It's pretty mixed up. I mean, it's upside down. Hell, we've got a United States senator that people are still wondering in Pennsylvania whether he's going to be released after. I mean, we have a United States senator that's been treated for clinical depression after almost a debilitating stroke for how long has he been in now? Like a month? Again, I'm not mocking his mental health condition, but yeah,
these are some extraordinarily difficult times to navigate. I'm not going to lie to you. This ain't patty cake. It ain't beanbag. Some pretty dark stuff going on out there. And people leading this country are, well, you get it. I'm not sure I have any more creative ways to say it anymore. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple. dental school, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, "You have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar." Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in a practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Just an update, a couple of things I wanted to talk about. John Drake and Davis Roush, the Nashville police chief, very forthcoming yesterday on this shooting story. Davis Roush is the director of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And he said something very interesting yesterday that I really appreciated, and I wanted you to hear this.
Again, I want to echo what Chief has said in reference to the great support and the great teamwork that has been taking place here, and as well as sending our heartfelt prayers to the families, to this community of these victims. Now, I know there'll be people who want to criticize us for prayers, but that's the way we do that in the South, right? We believe in prayer, and we believe in the power of prayer, and so our prayers go out to these families.
Right on. That's Davis Roush. Terry Moran over at ABC News, one of the few members of the media who actually, I mean, I'm sure he's doing it to make a point. As a left-winger, he's almost probably suggesting, well, look, you do this sort of thing, and this is what you're going to get, is probably what he means in sharing this. But nevertheless, he did share what is true about what's going on in Tennessee right now as a backdrop to this event yesterday.
All right, that is Police Chief John Drake of Nashville, who is briefing reporters on the deadly grade school shooting in Nashville at the Covenant School there this morning. The police confirming 6 dead, 3 children, 1 8 years old, 2 9 years old, and 3 adults, including Catherine Kuntz, who is the head of the Covenant School. The police chief also said that the shooter has been identified as 28-year-old female Audrey Hale. He said she's a former student of the school, and confirmed that Audrey Hale was identified herself as a transgender person. State of Tennessee earlier this month passed and the governor signed a bill that banned transgender medical care for minors, as well as a law that prohibited adult entertainment, including male and female impersonators, after a series of drag show controversies in that state.
Right. From the New York Post this morning, Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale ran an art website. In it, a section called Audrey Hale Illustrations, devoted to a title called Mad World, a prominent illustration, and it paying homage to the 1980 horror flick The Shining. That illustration uses typed words to create an image of Jack Nicholson, who was the lead in that movie. The illustration includes numerous quotes from the flick, with red rum, the mirror reflection of murder, most prominent. Mental illness. It's a real thing. Updates on the water situation in Philadelphia. CBS 3 talking about it.
Now, many people are wondering just how much bottled water they might need to get through this crisis. Our Alicia Roberts has that part of the story.
Deliveries of bottled water, like this one Monday night at the 7-Eleven in Spring Garden, can't come soon enough for Philadelphia residents trying to stock up.
I was at work, so I got friends and family to get water for me.
Mom Tynesha Martin says she's frustrated with the way city officials have handled the messaging following Friday night's chemical leak in Bristol.
And the fact that they just alarmed everyone and didn't give them a plan on what to do is beyond
Officials have been advising people
you gonna
and
vote then,
businesses
lady?
who could be impacted to have an emergency 3-day supply of water on hand. So just how much is that? FEMA says a normally active person needs to drink at least half a gallon of water each day. They also recommend keeping another gallon on hand per person for food preparation and, if needed, hygiene. Maggie Foster was able to grab 2 of the last bottles left at her grocery store.
Okay, so you get it. So the news is telling people you need 2 gallons of water per person a day, basically. Now, who in the hell is going to be able to procure 2 gallons of water per person per day while the city tells you good luck with the water? Does anybody believe that, what is this a city of? 4 million proper? I forgot the last count.
No, Philly proper is 1.5 million.
Yeah, I'm talking about surrounding. That's right. But you can assume people in the surrounding areas are running out to buy water too. But okay, yeah, just under 2 million people are out trying to buy 2 gallons of water per head. Right. Good luck. This is amazing. Dr. Mark Stigall last night with Tucker. They talked a little about. Is this the intro with Fetterman?
Yes.
Okay, let me. They set it up by talking about Fetterman. What a mess! I mean, just train derailments and toxins in the water, and a United States senator locked away at Walter Reed for mental health. All right, here we go.
Friday night in Bristol, Pennsylvania, a spill from a chemical plant flooded the Delaware River with various contaminants. This weekend, the city of Philadelphia told residents that they should go ahead and drink bottled water. And that caused stores to quickly sell out of bottled water. The city rescinded that guidance on Sunday. So it raises the question, was the water safe or not? And what is, by the way, going on with that state's new U.S. Senator, John Fetterman? Where is he? For these questions, we turn, as we always do, to Dr. Mark Stigall, who joins us in studio. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. So in order, what do you think of this water order?
In a word, it's not safe. I talked to Dr. Wilkenfeld, who's our head of occupational medicine, Tucker, at NYU. I said, is that water safe? Would you let your kids drink that water? He said, no. Just because they tested it once, I'd have my kids drinking bottled water. So we're talking about 1.5 million people in Philadelphia, 20 miles away from where this latex emulsion went zooming into a tributary of the Delaware River, where some of the same chemicals that you saw in East Palestine, Ohio, by the way, were there, the acrylates.
Yes.
And these acrylates, one of them, methyl acrylate, can actually break down to something that can cause colon cancer. Now, it's Colon Cancer Awareness Month this month, by the way, but I am deeply concerned about this. It's 8.1 thousand gallons of this. 8,100 gallons went into the water. Oof. And this is stuff you've been talking about for years. You've been talking for years about risks to the environment, about chemicals like this.
Yes.
They don't biodegrade. They're going to stay in the environment. And Philadelphia is at risk.
And there you go.
The actual environment.
Then they go in and, yeah, we should talk about the actual environment. He's exactly right. That's what I wrote at the Harump Society on Monday, as a matter of fact. We should talk about or Friday, I should say. The actual environment, dead whales, dead dolphins, toxins in the water. Where's the city? News. Hey, you should probably have a couple gallons of water per person in your house on hand. Not sure when the water is drinkable again. Good luck. You know how when we have a weather event and there's a run on bread and milk and eggs? That's a day or two. We're now, into multiple days of this? And it doesn't show any signs of abating? You guys got guys like Mark Stigall on cable, Eddie, saying, that's not going to go anywhere. Like, that's not going to it's not going to dissolve. I wouldn't drink the water. That's not good.
I just got a text message, literally just got a text message from the city of Philadelphia. They said water from Baxter plant safe at least through 11:59 p.m. Wednesday, March 29th. So I just got a text message. We're all good.
Oh, so the update is through tomorrow now. So now you can drink the water until midnight tomorrow.
Yes. And it says, for more information, go to phila.gov. So there you go.
Sure. I love how they keep bumping it. Don't drink the water today. Oh, never mind. We've changed our mind. You can drink it till tomorrow. You know what? You can drink it till Wednesday. It's fine. I don't think you can, folks, I don't know how to put this to you people in Philadelphia communications. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. When you tell people that the water is unsafe to drink as of Monday, That's all you got. You got the one shot. You did it. You've scared everybody and said they can't drink the water. There's no going back now. You can't now undo that and tell the public, you know what, never mind, keep drinking the water till midnight on Wednesday. That you can't do that. It's too late. Everyone's buying the water now. It's over. Big water. That's what it is. It's big water out there. Big Aquafina. Big Fiji. That's what it's. By the way, all those bottles, you know what those bottles are made of?
Oh,
oil.
Plastic?
Petroleum. Plastic. Oh. That's right. Steve Moore is our chief economist. Thanks for waiting, Steve. Had to paint that picture. It's been a busy, unfortunately heavy morning with lots of news that's not great. So we've got so much to cover and very little time to do it. But wanted to get into economic news of the day too, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I think the big news is that Joe Biden has basically said that he would the Republicans released their energy plan today. It will be H.R. 1 on Capitol Hill, and it basically is to reverse all the dingbat energy policies that Biden has put in place for the last 2 years and get back to energy independence and energy dominance and producing as much oil and gas and coal and everything we've got as possible so we can create jobs and not be dependent on OPEC. And Biden says he's going to veto the bill. And Chucky Schumer says it's dead in arrival in the Senate because they like it when we have to get our oil from places like Saudi Arabia and Russia and Iran rather than from Texas and North Dakota and Oklahoma.
The fallout, Steve-O, from this banking crisis continues. The headlines continue to be ominous. Here's one, and we talked about this last week. It's not getting a lot of attention because I don't think the government and most people don't want to run. But here's what I just knew to be anecdotally true. Friends of mine who had money in small banks and regional banks confessed to me, I pulled my money out and put it into bigger institutions. I got nervous. And sure enough, here's a headline from the street. Banking crisis, small banks hit by massive cash withdrawals. Yeah. It's happening. Small banks are having all kinds of withdrawals happening right now.
Yeah, look, my big worry about what's happening in the banking industry, and by the way, I think the news is not, I think people are a little calmer about the banking situation today than they were a week ago, but we'll see. I mean, the market has been on a little bit of a trend upward, and the banking stocks have done better. But it appears to me, and I pray that I'm wrong about this, because I go back to Jimmy Stewart and It's a Wonderful Life when you have the little banking and the building and loan, and it was a community bank. And what's happening is community banks are being swallowed up. I mean, basically the sharks are swallowing the minnows. So you have 4 big banks out there, including Wells Fargo, Citi, J.P. Morgan, and those banks are humongous, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of assets. And I worry that we're going to end up with just 4 mega banks, and then they're going to be treated like utilities, like partners of the government. And I think it's a bad thing for the free enterprise system.
Yes. My dad years ago, decades ago, I worked in a small regional bank. He was actually in loans. He was a lender in this small regional bank, and he tells me stories. It's so funny now. He tells me stories of guys that would come in and, be hard up, and they'd need, $3,000 for this or that, and it was on a handshake, and you knew where the guy lived if he didn't pay it, and it was just a trust, a direct relationship, whether you granted the loan.
You knew who the people. Yeah, you knew who the people were. If you wanted to get a small business, if you needed cash for your business, you could go down the street and go to your community banker and in most cases get that loan. They lived down the street from you, so you knew who the people were. Having the big banks run the whole country, because then what you get is this kind of incestuous relationship between big government, big business, and big banks, and that's not America. So I hope that does not happen, because it is just going to lead to more and more government control. The other kind of tangent of this story that I find really fascinating is that, the banking, where were the banking regulators here? There's no industry that's more regulated than banks, right? And so the law says, we need more regulation. The industry that's more regulated than anyone else. And what the real villains here, it appears, in Silicon Valley Bank and some of these other bank failures are the bank regulators, who are just completely asleep at the switch. Who didn't even they had done an audit of Silicon Valley Bank just a month earlier, and then all of a sudden it goes under. And so the other interesting part about this is that if you look at what were considered the safest assets that you could possibly hold in the early 2000s up to 2008. Oh, mortgage-backed securities. Yeah, hold on to mortgage-backed securities. Those are completely safe. Well, guess what? Those are what failed and caused the whole economy to collapse because the experts in Washington were wrong. Then they said, okay, no, not mortgage-backed securities. The safest thing to hold is these government bonds. Hold the government bonds. They're never going to lose their money, except guess what? When the interest rate went from virtually 0 to 5% in 12 months, all of a sudden the value of those bonds collapsed, Chris. And now those banks that got the interest rate arbitrage wrong are in collapse. And so my point is the government was the ones who was pointing and shoving these banks into those very investments that failed.
Headline from Fox Business, Steve Moore, banking crisis threatens to ignite credit crunch for U.S. households. The worst banking crisis since the Great Recession could severely tighten credit for U.S. households and businesses. And I would add, excuse me, as you and I have talked, that as credit card debt increases, the interest on that debt increases with every Fed rate interest hike.
Yeah, that's what worries me about these Fed rate increases is that as the interest rates keep going up and up, it's not just the federal funds rate that goes up, it's all interest rates that tend to follow the Fed funds rate. So mortgages are going up, and you're right. The interest rates now on credit card debt are going up to 20 to 25%. And so it's not just these companies that are in trouble. It's more and more households that are in trouble as well as savings rates fall. And again, just to square this circle, why is all this happening? It circles right back to the massive spending spree under Biden that unleashed the inflation, that unleashed the higher interest rates. And I hate to say it, but the chickens are coming home to roost.
Steve Moore, our chief economist. We check in with him every week. Always grateful for your perspective, my friend. Thank you so much. Okay, let me tell you, MyPillow has been absolutely outstanding to sleep on these last few weeks. The new MyPillow 2.0, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I sleep like a baby. Between the Giza Dream Sheets I'm sleeping on, the MyPillow body pillow that I keep tucked in between my knees and on my arm every night, between that and the MyPillow 2.0, this brilliant new pillow with the heat dissipating fabric that keeps the pillow smooth and cool to the touch the whole night. Tremendous. I love it. Even Dean now loves his MyPillow dog bed so much, he spends most of his time sleeping on it in the office. You go to MyPillow.com today and you use my name, Chris Podcast. That's the promo code, Chris Podcast. When you do that, you save up to 66% on everything on the website, whether it's the slippers or the towels or the pillows or the anything. But on the pillow specifically, the MyPillow 2.0, you'll get a free MyPillow 2.0 when you order one if you use my name, Chris Podcast, as the promo code. So you can call them, you can go online. Either way, use the name Chris Podcast, and know this, that everything you buy at MyPillow.com comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. These are American-made products, every bit of it, American-made. And they are proud of what they stand behind as a product, and I can tell you they're really well-made quality products. So look, are they the cheapest products? Of course they're not. People get mad sometimes because they think the price point is a little higher. I understand. I mean, like, no pressure. I'm not telling you got to go buy it, but I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. So MyPillow products are really high quality, and they're made here in the country, and they're guaranteed to last. So, you can buy something cheaper that'll fall apart on you, and you'll have to buy it again and spend equal amounts of money, or buy a really quality American-made product right now at MyPillow.com and save using my name, Chris Podcast, or call MyPillow today if you'd rather, 800-932-5056, 800-932-5056. By the way, as this story was breaking yesterday, the man we're pretending to be president of the United States held an event at the White House. Do we know what the scheduled event was about, Fast Eddie?
It was women in business.
Oh, okay. Celebrating women in business. That's right. It's Women's Month. As if the left is all about celebrating women these days. Right. So we're having a big party for the ladies at the White House, and old husk of this husk we call president comes down. Now, he has been briefed by now. He knows now. Our friend Simon Atiba actually tweeted this yesterday. President Biden, at the beginning of his speech,
He had been briefed that people were dead, that a school shooting had happened in Nashville. And he walks up to the podium, and Fox News and many others jump in because they've already reported it. They already know. This is already national news. So the president steps up to the podium, and they assume that he's about to probably make some remarks on this thing that has just happened. Here's the first thing our president says.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs.
Yeah. So that's where our... Remember the hell they gave George W. Bush for continuing to read to school children on 9/11? I always thought that was the stupidest criticism. George Bush is reading to small school children. The nation is under attack. And rather than run out of the room with his head on fire, he says, I'm going to maintain composure for a minute and finish what I'm doing in front of these little children. I don't want to scare them. And forever he was mocked as being the guy who continued to read My Pet Goat while the country was under attack. It was a moment. It wasn't like it went on for 30 minutes. It was a moment. He was trying not to startle and alarm school children. I always thought that was the stupidest line of attack. But how do you explain the ice cream eating geriatric in the White House who's just been briefed that there's a school shooting in Nashville, and he goes up and starts talking about chocolate chip ice cream? How do you explain that one? I'll tell you why, because they probably told him who it was that shot. A woman. A woman who thinks she's a man. They knew who this was. Media almost immediately knew who it was. Certainly law enforcement knew who it was. It puts a real damper on Women's History Month, doesn't it, when there's a woman now pretending to be a man shooting up a school. They just don't want to talk about it, folks. It's not that they don't know. They just don't want to talk about it. Really thrilled to be joined by Tomi Lahren, host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless, every evening at Outkick.com. And this is a perfect lead up to, while a terrible story yesterday in her hometown of Nashville. Tomi, I welcome you to the show. The good news this morning, the heroic news this morning, is the story of a couple of Nashville's finest who got involved and stopped this woman before she did something even worse. Tomi, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you guys for talking about Nashville and for keeping, the spotlight on this story. And every time I talk about it, I do just what you did, and I talk about our brave Metro Nashville police officers who rushed into danger, didn't even think twice about it, making sure that they kept those kids safe, or as safe as possible, considering all the carnage and the tragedy. So we thank our Nashville officers. It's such a sad circumstance, but we do our hearts go out to the families of victims, but we thank our wonderful officers for everything that they did to neutralize that threat as fast as they did.
Tomi, I don't know Nashville well. I've only visited it once. It's a lovely place, and I know it's become a destination for a lot of people. It's a great place to call home and a great place to live. I don't know much about this institution, this Christian institution. It looks pretty big, the campus.
Yeah, it's a wonderful private Christian school. And I'll tell you this, in talking about everything leading up to this and what we hope is going to be a discussion after this tragedy, a real honest reflection and discussion. I don't know if you're familiar, but in Tennessee here, just recently, there was a law passed that made it illegal for drag queens to perform in front of children, also made it illegal to perform gender transition and hormone therapy treatments on minors. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. And there's been a lot of anger and vitriol aimed at the Christian community over this and over the Christian community's advocacy for protecting children. And in my mind, no doubt that this played some kind of a role. There's a real anti-Christian rhetoric in this country, but especially aimed in Tennessee. So we need to get to the bottom of all the elements here. But after, hearing something about the manifesto of this shooter and the map that they had of the school, being a former student, there's a lot of connections that are going to be made over the next couple of days. And we hope that the mainstream media doesn't ignore them just because they're not politically convenient at this time.
Outkick.com is where you find Tomi's work every day. Tomi Lahren is Fearless is the name of the show at Outkick.com. And by the way, since we've talked, congratulations on the new show. It looks great. I've caught a few episodes when I can. Everybody, I know you understand and appreciate in the content world, you're constantly churning, so it's hard to keep eye on everybody doing everything all the time. But the show looks great, and you're being there in Nashville, kind of at the epicenter of this story. One thing we know, and you just mentioned the manifesto. Apparently, this person wrote extensively about what she intended to do, and I find it kind of interesting that dribs and drabs are being let out about that. When I'd sure like to get my hands on the whole thing, because I bet we'd find, Tommy, that written in that manifesto is probably some pretty detailed trouble, maybe even hatred, directed at just exactly who you were talking about, those of faith.
Right. Well, I do have confidence because this occurred in Nashville, Tennessee, that we will get to the bottom of it. I don't think that they're going to safeguard this for political reasons, quite like they would do in other cities and other states. So I do think that we're going to get some answers. Metro Nashville has been very forthright about it. And again, the way the mainstream media is going out of their way to talk about how some are misgendering the shooter and this, that, and the other. As somebody who lives in Nashville, this is utterly repulsive to me that we would be talking about pronouns and misgendering when we're actually talking about the slaughter of innocent lives. But it doesn't surprise me coming out of the mainstream media. The calls for gun control don't surprise me. We really need to talk about, though, is mental illness.
Yep.
And there is a huge problem right now with the radical arm of the LGBTQ movement and their targeting of adolescents, young people, the confusion that they're throwing on these young people. They don't even know what they are, who they are, what they want to be. And it's deeply disturbing. It's a conversation that needs to be had. And I know that in Nashville, we'll definitely be having that.
I know you'll agree with this. Well, maybe you won't. I shouldn't assume you'll agree with this. But one thing that I have found, even amongst people that I know who are gay, who may or may not be conservative, some who are, some aren't. But I find that even amongst the gay community, this trans thing is next level. And most of the gay folks that I've encountered, when you discuss it, share the point of view that that's next level. It's troubling. It's not. Most don't accept that as. If you want to say normal, I hate to use the word normal because I don't know what that means exactly. But I'm just saying, even amongst the LGBTQ community, this transgender thing is an issue. I've heard gay folks explain that to me.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always so difficult when we have to talk about it because there's so much political correctness. We're going to step into a landmine. But we need to remove that cloud and that muddiness out of all this and have the real discussion. They're targeting young people. They're targeting children to exploit them. And this is not your average gay community. This is something completely different. This is targeting young people, telling them that they don't know what gender they are, telling them that they should do hormone therapy and go to extreme measures. This is another level. And I agree with you. There's a lot of folks that I know in the LGBT community that are saying, hey, listen, this is not us. This is not what we stand for. We don't talk about this as it relates to children. This is something that should only be an adult conversation to be had. So I agree with you, and I hope that the mainstream gay community gets more active and more vocal about this because it puts them in a bad light that they don't deserve. So I agree with you, and we need to have discussions about mental health as it pertains to our youth. This is the breakdown of the American family, the breakdown of the American church, and they're going after our kids. So in my opinion, there's nothing off the table when we have this discussion.
Amen. Tomi Lahren hosts at Outkick every day. Tomi Lahren is Fearless is the name of the show. Tommy, this is we're wrapping up Women's History Month, and ironically, this is another one of these stories. We talked with Riley Gaines, who I know you know, the 12-time NCAA swimmer, beaten out by a man pretending to be a woman. On the other side of this, and I know you've addressed this on your show, it is remarkable to me as we celebrate women this month that there's so many on the left willing to embrace men who want to compete as women and beat women and expect us all to shut up about it. That's remarkable.
It is. Where are the feminists? The whole Women's History Month, the women's rights movement should be about ensuring rights for women and taking away opportunities, titles, and accolades from women to give them to biological men is the exact antithesis of what the women's rights and feminist movement should stand for. But again, as we were just discussing, it's this rainbow mafia effect. That's what I call the radical LGBTQ plus movement, and I call them the rainbow mafia, and for good reason, because they allow this mind plague to become mainstream and normalized. And you even see ESPN honoring this Leah Thomas over actual women who are competing in sports. At this rate, women's sports will cease to exist because you're going to have a whole lot of men that are going to see this as an opportunity and we're not going to see actual women being given the credit that they deserve for their hard work. This is a snowball effect. It's not just one or two. Now it's becoming increasingly more common that we see this in women's sports. So somebody needs to stand up and do something before the Rainbow Mafia runs roughshod over our entire country.
You know, you mentioned this, and I'm really glad to hear it. You're very confident that the Nashville police will release all that we need to know. I mean, it seems they were very forthcoming, very quick to release video. You don't anticipate that they're going to politically sit on any of this. We'll know everything we need to know about it in due course?
I think we'll know a lot, because one thing I know about Tennessee, Nashville might be kind of a liberal area, right, because we're an arts and music community. But Nashville is in Tennessee, and Tennessee is very red and very conservative. And like I said, we just passed that bill protecting children from the Rainbow Mafia. I expect we're going to get some transparency on this, because I think Tennessee lawmakers are going to make sure that happens.
Hey, by the way, I'm not going to keep you forever, Tommy, but I have to, since the last time we talked, and it's a while since we've talked, you're married now. Congratulations. I see on Instagram with your new, I don't know how long you've been married now, but congratulations. It's been a bit.
Yeah, it's been about 5 months. So, yeah, still in the newlywed phase. And we're right about to the start of baseball season. My husband is a coach for the Mets, the AAA team for the Mets. So baseball season is about ready to kick off, and I'm glad we could end it on a happy note because of everything crappy in this country. I'm glad that baseball is about to be back.
Baseball's great. Yeah, we need a little something to distract from time to time. Great to talk with you, Tomi Lahren. Appreciate your time today. Good luck. Continued good luck with the show on Outkick.com.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your thoughts about Nashville. We certainly appreciate it here in the city.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.